Good afternoon, this is Freddy with the Reptile, Freddy with the Snake. How you guys doing today? I'm doing fantastic. Something's been on my mind recently and I would like to talk about it on why sometimes ball pythons go off food or go on hunger strikes. So we're going to dive right into that. And if you see me look over to the side, I have notes and I'm going to follow those notes. But we're going to go back to genetic and breeding. All right. And I have consulted with vets and other breeders about this topic as well. And when I was talking to the vet, they go, mini ball pythons are inbreds, especially in the pet trade. It could lead to neurological problems or feeding problems. All right. And here at Early Project Reptiles, we try not to inbreed our ball pythons. All right. We like to keep mother and father the same, and then the hatchlings away from mother and father and their siblings during breeding season. We don't like to do inbreeding. And that goes down to incubation as well. If you have it too high or too low, it can also lead to neurological problems and feeding problems. So it all starts in the genetic and breeding as well. And then another medical issue is RI, so respiratory infections. It is very common for a ball python to have respiratory infections. It could be wheezing, mouth open breathing, bubbling from the mouth are all key signs of respiratory infection. When it comes down to wheezing, it could be multiple factors. All right, it could be a bedding, little fiber bedding got in their mouth or in their nose and they're just trying to get it out. So it's always just to keep an idea or keep watch on your animal. Be a good pet owner. If you feel like it's an RI, please take it to the vet. And the vet can give you further instructions from there. Incorrect humidity, too high or too low, can cause a respiratory infection. So keep an eye on your humidity. I like to keep mine between 65 and 75. 75 on the high end when they're in shed. Hydration could be a problem. So if your snake doesn't look dehydrated, it might be dehydrated. So I'd recommend getting some lukewarm water and soak them for about 10 to 15 minutes. I just soaked 3 of my animals today because they get bad shed, and I will talk about that later in the video. If you do hear some noise, it is raining outside. I'm not a big fan of the rain, but it is raining here in South Carolina. Handling. I do not handle my animals 20 to 48 hours before and after feeding. So if I'm feeding on Thursday and Wednesday's right there, I will not handle my animal on Wednesday. And that goes for Friday. So 24 hours after feeding, I do not handle my animal. I will go in there and spot clean, but I'll try my hardest not to handle my animal after feeding or before feeding, because that could lead to refusal food, which is another result of hunger strike. So try to handle them 2 days before or 2 days after you're going to feed. All right. And then feeding factor. All right. Some of y'all are probably feeding it too big of a mouse and it can't go down its gullet. So make sure you're sticking to a feeding thing that's not too large. All right. It can be a little too large, but try to keep it on the smaller side to be on the safe side. Right? And I'm also hearing, I don't have too much experience with this, but the color. With very little research I've done, sometimes the color of a rodent could play a factor. I haven't seen that with my ball pythons, maybe a little bit, but not consistently. So just keep that in mind. And then enclosure setup. I think this is the biggest one. So when it comes to enclosures, I tend to keep my ball pythons on the smaller side of the enclosures. All right. Because they like to feel bigger than the enclosure. Now, you don't want them tiny where they could have some problems, but I tend to keep them on the smaller side, because they'll eat more. If you move into a bigger enclosure, there could be refusal. I've seen that happen. I have 2 enclosures. My ball pythons don't really like eating in those enclosures. All right, so I keep them in my rack system for now because they eat better in the rack system than the actual enclosure itself. So if you're getting an enclosure, keep that in mind. You don't want to go too big, but you also don't want to go too small, but they do tend to like smaller type enclosures. The large enclosure can make them feel more exposed and anxious. So just keep that in mind. And make sure you have plenty of hides or cover. With my starter kits, it comes with medium hide or small hide, your choice. And if it's still trying to refuse food just a little bit, go ahead and put a towel over it. Make it feel dark and enclosed. So just because we don't like a ball python to go on hunger strike. But that also leads to my last point, is self-regulate. I have a few of my males that are about 500 to 600 grams, which is a great weight for them. And they'll just naturally go off food. They feel comfortable around that weight. Now, if they go prolong, just keep an eye on the weight. If it starts to get below, look at some of the factors. What's going on? But there is 1 or 2 of my ball pythons in my collection that are just comfortable around 500 to 600 grams. And those are for males. Females, they'll start self-regulating at 1,500 grams. I have a few females that are around the 1,500 gram mark. They haven't really lost too much weight, but they haven't gained much weight. And 1,500 grams is a good weight for a female. And then if you're really concerned, just keep an eye on it. Like, I have a female. She'll feed every 1 month or every 2 months because she's a good size. She's a little older than most of my new females. And she's pushing 300 grams. So I'm also weight watching her. And then there's one of my females. She was about 1,500 grams. She's refused a couple meals. And I wanted to begin breeding her. So I decided to put a male in there. Oh, that was a baby deer. So I put a male in there, and she's back on food. All right. Now this is not the ideal, and I would not recommend it. But I breed my females once a month. So it all depends what your needs are for the snake and how you tend to help them in the future. But those are my 7 key points. But I think the main one is the enclosure setup. All right. So this is Freddie with the Reptile. If you have any more ideas or thoughts, leave them in the comments below. I would like to hear how you guys stop the hunger strike. But also just keep an eye on the weight and do your own research. Do what's best for you as a pet owner, a responsible pet owner, and for the animal itself. So thanks so much for watching, and you guys have a great day.